Greetings folks, and welcome to this instructional video on how to create an OPenfiler virtual machine and how to do an OPenfiler hard disk install. Couple of housekeeping stuff before we go ahead and get started. I'm using my C drive here on my laptop, but I recommend that you will be using your removable drive at home. So I want you to create the virtual machine on your removable drive in case you needed to bring it to school or take it elsewhere. So what I've done here is on my C drive I have created two folders, an ISO folder and VMs folder. And for organizational purposes, inside this ISOs folder I have Linux ISOs, okay, and under the VMs folder I have Linux VMs. Inside the Linux VMs folder I already created an OPenfiler folder just to get it ready for my OPenfiler virtual machine. So just to keep things organized, because oftentimes if you're not paying attention, you end up wondering where the virtual machine went and where are the files saved and so on. So I'm just trying to help you eliminate these kinds of confusions. Good, let's go ahead and get started with the virtual machine. So I have my VMware Workstation 8, that's what I'm using here. I'm going with a custom virtual machine. I'm going to leave this at default for Workstation 8. You need to select the installer disk image file, ISO, browse for it, and as I showed you, let me do this again real quick. I have this saved under my C drive. It might be the G drive, F drive for you, or what the case might be. Here's my ISOs folder, here's my Linux ISOs subfolder, and notice here that I'm going with OPenfiler 2.3, that's the version, x86, which means it is for the 32-bit processor. It is vital, it is essential that you select the correct version of OPenfiler. And the reason I'm going with 2.3 x86 is just to make sure that it would work with everyone regardless of the type of processor at home, whether it be 32-bit or 64-bit. If you visit our class on Blackboard and go to the resources and web links folder, you'll find the link which will point you to where to download the OPenfiler 2.3 x86. Okay, so I've got the correct ISO selected. I'm going to go ahead and press next. Here you need to select correct version of Linux. I've got Linux here selected. You want to make sure that you scroll down and select other Linux 2.6x kernel. Please be careful not to select the 64-bit version by mistake. So I'm selecting 2.6x kernel. I'm going to click on the next button here quickly. I'm going to name my virtual machine OPenfiler 2.3 x86, so I can remember that this is 2.3 version and a 32-bit processor. I need to make sure that the virtual machine files are saved in the correct destination. And as I mentioned before, let me scroll down here to my computer, to my C drive, and to the folder I have previously created. I've got a folder here for my virtual machines, and there is a subfolder for my Linux-based virtual machines, and within that folder there's a subfolder for OPenfiler 2.3. So I'm going to go ahead and select it, check and make sure that this is the correct path for where the files for the virtual machines are going to be saved. This looks fine. I'm going to select next here. I'm going to go with one processor, one core. So total processor cores is 1. That's sufficient for this virtual machine. Just for this machine to work comfortably, up the RAM to 1 gigabyte. That's more than enough for the 32-bit version, for the 2.3 32-bit version. So that's 1 gigabyte here, that's sufficient. Make sure that your network connection is bridged, and leave the large scale integration enabled. Create a brand new virtual disk. Make sure SCSI is selected. 8 gigabyte is too big for what we're trying to do. You can actually cut this back to 4 gigabyte, and that's actually more than what we need, but just to make sure that we have room to grow. Okay, so we've got 4 gigabyte here for our first virtual disk. VMware Workstation is about to create the VMDK, or the virtual machine disk. That's fine. Here's a summary of the configuration of the machine. This is the correct version of the operating system, the correct name of the operating system. This is the correct kernel. This is the right amount of RAM, 1 gigabyte. This is the correct size of my virtual disk, which is 4 gigabyte. The network adapter is going to be bridged, so this all looks good. What you want to do here is, because you will be editing the settings of this virtual machine, by default you will find a check mark here that says power on this virtual machine after creation. And what you want to do here is you want to make sure that this is actually unchecked. Okay, so we can do some editing before the virtual machine actually starts. I'm going to select the finish button, and what I need to do here is, specifically, I need to create 10 more disks. The size of each should be half gigabyte, or 512 megabytes. So I'm going to try to do this as quickly as possible, create 10 more drives in addition to the existing one. So I'm going to go straight here to VM, or edit virtual machine settings from here. I'm selecting a new hard drive or hard disk. I'm sorry, let me click on add here first. Add a hard disk, which is the first item, new, SCSI, and I'm going to make sure that the size here is decimal value 0.512. Okay, 0.512. Make sure that you do that. If you don't have decimal, you will end up creating a disk that is a 512 gigabyte in size. That's humongous. Okay, so I'm going to select next here and finish. Just to confirm, here's my second hard disk, and it's listed in megabytes as opposed to the top one that we created, which is in gigabytes. If this is all good, then feel free to repeat this process 9 more times. Let me see how quickly I can do this. Okay, I'm halfway through. 5 more to go. I think I am done. So let me take a look here. Here is my my first hard disk, 4 GB, which will be used for the installation of the operating system. I've got 10 more here. So total of 11 disks. Okay. Once you reach this point, you are ready to power on this virtual machine and to start the installation of the operating system. So I'm going to press OK here. I'm going to say power on this virtual machine. Okay, I'm going to press inside the virtual machine and press enter to start the installation. When the screen comes and asks you whether you want to test the CD media, please skip. So press the side arrow till you select skip here, then press enter. OPenfiler welcome machine, welcome screen should come up next. Good, we're on the right track here, so I'm going to go ahead and press next here. I'm going to leave the default keyboard to US English. Okay, it's really important that you pay attention here. Notice when you get to this screen, you've got two options: automatically partition or manually partition. And I'm gonna go ahead and select manually partition. It's really important to pay attention to this step. And select next here. Okay. Would you like to initialize and create partitions? I'm gonna click yes here. You're gonna get this message. As a matter of fact, total of 11 times, one for every one of the disks that we created. So every time it comes up, be sure to press yes. So as you see, we just got done with SDA and now it's looking into SDB. So it's going to repeat that till it finishes all the disks that we've created. So yes here, SDC yes, D yes, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and this is the last drive. So should disappear from here, and now we should get into partitioning SDA. Very good. So selecting SDA, I'm going to select new partition for SDA. I'm going to scroll up here. And before we do anything, you want to make sure that the other disks are unchecked. The only disk that should be checked at this point in time is SDA, because that's where the operating system installation is going to happen. So uncheck the remaining disks. Good, it's very good. So notice here in my window, let me make sure that you guys can see the entire screen. Notice here that I've got SDA checked, the remaining drives are unchecked. I'm going to leave the default size for 100 megabytes, and I'm going to select the mount point to be boot, and that's where all the kernel files are going to be saved. I'm going to also scroll down here and select force to be primary partition. Notice here that the performance of the mouse movements is a bit sluggish because VMware tools haven't been installed yet on this machine. I'm going to select OK, and you should be able to see the first partition on SDA. Here is SDA1, mount point is boot, file type is extension 3. That's excellent. I see the size in megabytes, 100, and I'm getting ready to create my second partition. So again, very carefully select the right drive, which is SDA. That's what we're using for the installation. I'm going to be creating a second partition. The size of this partition, which I'm going to use for my swap partitions for memory, is going to be 1 gigabyte. So I'm going to change that to 1024. Again, you need to make sure that the only drive that is left checked is SDA. It's a bit of a time consuming, but once you get past this point and the installation is complete, everything should move much faster from here. So just a quick review here. All the drives are unselected with exception to my SDA. Good. I'm gonna also scroll up here just to make sure that I've got file system type changed to swap. Excellent. So this is a swap partition on my SDA drive, and the size is 1 gigabyte. Very good. Once you reach this point, you should be able to scroll down and create that partition. So before I do so, let me make sure that force to be primary partition is checked. Okay, let me check on this really quickly. I'm right here under the SDA drive. I've got two partitions. SDA1, mount point is boot. That's where all the kernel files will be saved. This is the right file, which is extension 3. I've got SDA2. That's a swap partition for my memory. I need the last partition, which is going to be my root partition. So again, I'm creating a new partition. Once more, you guys know the drill by now. You need to make sure that all drives are unselected with exception to SDA. And I'm going to say, as a matter of fact, I'm going to say fill to maximum allowable size. Or so really, this was a 4 gigabyte hard drive, we used a little over one gig and a half, so the remaining space is going to be used for the root partition, and that's where all the root applications will be saved, or all the applications used and files used by the root account will be saved. I'm going to select force to be primary partition, and most importantly, I need to make sure that the correct mount point is being selected. So selecting the drop down menu from here, and I'm selecting the root mount point. Extension 3 is correct. Fill to maximum allowable size is correct. Force to be primary partition is correct. Let me save this partition really quickly. Okay, very good. So I can see here, this is working pretty well. Here's my boot partition, my swap partition, my root partition. That's the right size, right file type. All three partitions are created under my SDA drive, so I'm good to go. I'm going to scroll down here and select next. I'm done with partitioning, and the next step will be the actual installation of the operating system. Second question is viral here. This is pointing to automatically assigning an IP address to your OPenfiler server, and this might be a good option if you have a wireless router at home. So if you have a wireless router at home and your wireless router has a DHCP server, you can leave this option checked and it will automatically go and assign an IP address to your wireless router. Okay. Otherwise, if you don't, then you probably want to go with, you want to uncheck the DHCP option and go with manual IP address assignment. Okay. So of course, if you're going to go with manual IP address assignment, you want to make sure that you don't have any devices at home that live on the IP address of 192.168.1.1. Okay, so as a matter of fact, the safest option here, since you're doing this from home and chances are you do have a wireless router from home, is to leave the DHCP option enabled and just automatically obtain an IP address from your DHCP server on your wireless router, along with the remaining necessary TCP/IP properties. So let's leave this option checked. Okay, if you're doing this at home, and I'm going to select the next button here. Automatic recognizes that this is the Eastern time. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to select next again. Oh, okay. This is asking for the root password. Let me scroll up here for the root account. So, according to the instructions in the lab manual, the root account should have a password of EMC student. Okay, so root password EMC student. Take your time when you type this, make sure that you know what the password here is and confirm it second time. Good, now I've got the password for the root account created. I'm going to select next here. Take a minute to check for dependencies, and now we're ready to roll with the installation. This should take not more than 2 to 3 minutes actually. And the next screen that shows up, it should tell you what IP address OPenfiler was able to lease from your DHCP server, and that's what we're going to be using for managing your OPenfiler server from a web interface. Installation of the kernel is going on. Alright, very well. Let's go ahead and reboot the server. Once you get the congratulations, the installation is complete message, you know that you're one step away from logging in to your server. It should be done in a minute here or so. And we're going to do this actually from the host operating system. So is the OPenfiler network storage. Booting the kernel, everything should go fine here since we selected the correct version of OPenfiler and went with the 32-bit processor. Devices and modules should be starting now. As you can see, everything is okay. Ethernet 0 is being started at this point in time with the network processes. We're just waiting for it to get an IP address from the DHCP server, which went well. Okay, very good. So the IP address that was assigned to me from my DHCP server is 192.168.1.11. Okay, you might end up receiving a different IP address from your server, from your DHCP server on your wireless router, right? But what's important here is to note what the IP address is, because that's what you're going to be using to manage this box. Okay, you can run a couple tests here. As you can see, it says localhost login. I can log in with my root account that was created during the installation just to test. Password is EMC student, right? So I get the root prompt here. I get a command installation scripts, and I can run some tests real quick, such as installing lookup. We should be able to log into the OPenfiler server. Google.com. Just to make sure that I'm connected out to the internet. And I am, because I see that I was able to resolve google.com to Google's IP address of 74.125. So I know that I'm connected out to the internet. So from here I can exit out. Okay, I see again what my IP address is, 192.168.1.11. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my host operating system to log into my OPenfiler. Notice the port number is 446, and this is an HTTPS connection. Okay, so I'll go directly to my host operating system where I have my VMware Workstation 8 installed, right? And from there I'm just going to open a browser right now. I'm going to open a browser here, and in my browser I'm going to type the IP address of OPenfiler. Again, this is an HTTPS session to 192.168.1.11, port 446, right? Here you'll get a warning about accepting the certificate. Just select I understand the risks. to press on add exceptions, confirm security exception, and from here you'll get the login page. It's really important to understand that here this is the web admin. Do not use the root account for the web admin. The web admin account is OPenfiler, as stated in the lab instruction. OPenfiler, and the default password is password. I'm going to log in, and you should be able to see the web interface of OPenfiler from here. Very good. Just to check and make sure that all of our 11 drives were recognized, I'm going to go ahead and go to my block devices real quick. I'm going to select volumes, and from volumes I'm going to go to block devices. Alright, and from here you should be able to see all of your drives in there, and I do see them. They're recognized. I see that my SDA has 3 partitions, and this is the correct size, and I see that the remaining drives haven't been partitioned yet. This really covered lab 1, and as I mentioned in the assignment, you do not need to go any further from here for lab 1. You don't need to install the VMware tools because you will be managing this box from your Windows host operating system. So from there you're ready to proceed to lab 2 and 3, and from there it should be really easy once you've completed the installation of OPenfiler successfully. Try it out. Let me know if you have any problems. I'm only one email away. Alright, take care now.